Today, Timber S is here at RC Deaf Missions, and we are going to interview Miss Agnes, one of the founder of RC Deaf Missions. Today, we have Priya singing, and this is Miss Agnes. Okay, she is one of the founder of RC Deaf Missions, and will be sharing more stories regarding RC Deaf Missions with us.
Some introduction about me is I have close to 30 years of experience as a sign language interpreter. We call it Malaysian Sign Language Interpreting in BIM. So I have close to 30 years of experience with the deaf. Okay? And I'm quite fluent interpreting. I've also been very active in deaf advocacy, things I believe in. I'm also a trainer and part of the evaluating team in our diploma in BIM interpreting. I'm also an IECL coach. If you haven't heard of IECL, it means Institute of Executive Coach and Leadership. So I'm a coach. So the story is, it was in 1990, way back then, when I started volunteering in outreach programs in a religious setting. Started all the way there in a church setting. And I never knew where my feet would take me. I never knew where your feet are landing up. So it was a group of disabled people on wheelchairs that invited me to be part of their support group. And I was the able-bodied representative. Way back in 1990, no service for the deaf within a religious setting. So they had this idea, being physically disabled, that they wanted to provide support for different disabilities, the blind, the visually impaired, the deaf, the physically challenged, and I was part of that idea that they wanted to see become a reality. And then in that year itself, they launched sign language classes. We collaborated with an organization that was led by the late Mr. Tan Yap. He's given the Father of the Deaf Award for his contributions in the country. And he was instrumental in the 1980s when American Sign Language came in to Malaysia. We no longer are focusing on that now. So we collaborated with him and his two teachers. I remember that first class, the first course, the basic course, had 145 people registered, and it was spilling out of the huge hall, But even then, there was no call, there was no push. I was just intrigued by the language. But as the course progressed, I was also a student. Something that he said just changed me, He said there are thousands of deaf people in the country. So I said to Mr. Tan, if there are thousands of deaf people in the country, how come we don't see any?
Correct.
He said that's because it's an invisible disability. I don't know, it was just something that just triggered. And then I realized in a church, where are the deaf? Where were they? Were they present and I wasn't sure? And there were no interpreting at that time, no service. That was my wake-up call. That was my wake. That's the inspiration first.
Yes, like the bell rings.
Gosh, and then my heart started to search for them long before I see. So that flourished, and my tenure of service was like 15 years, where I developed a program, I trained interpreters. Struggling as I may at that time, I also learned pull here, pull there. Last time, no formal teaching.
Correct.
You're never going to be ready. You just get into it. The best people were being able, starting with one deaf, when we provided the service, one by one started to come. Then they bring their friends. So I had a 15 years of enriching experience. But that last 5 years, I would say 15 to 18 years, but that last 5 years, something else happened to me. I saw myself, in fact, I began to be more involved outside of the church parameters. I was helping a lot of deaf people find jobs. And then I was interpreting for medical, legal, all sorts of needs of deaf individuals. And I began to feel so much for the deaf. I was becoming active in deaf advocacy. And there were 3 areas of concern, really. I was helping many deaf people find jobs, but those very people that I helped, after they go in, they came out. And I was thinking, what is happening here? Then I realized it's not as easy as just finding the deaf jobs. Because in the companies, you may have the big boss really with the heart, but there are different layers in an organization. They're just not ready. They don't know how to deal with the deaf, and some of them come with negative perspective the deaf cannot do. So with this in mind, with these perspectives or their experiences, many deaf people felt very oppressed. Okay. So the thing is, employment was a big issue. Very hard for deaf people, for others to believe that deaf people can give. And also the educational opportunity for deaf also very limited. You don't have interpreters, and many deaf are struggling to keep up with the hearing people. So for you, for each of us hearing, when we are at 7 years old, I think we already have 1,000 word vocabulary stored in the brain that we can communicate. For many deaf people at 7, it's 0. So they're always, frustrated trying to catch up with the hearing people. Same exam, they have to sit for school, curriculum, everything the same, but what a struggle. So that was employment. Number 2 is communication. In many companies, how many companies have people that can sign? How many? In RC, we make sure if our staff there is interpreter. We make sure, and full time. So a lot of employers feel that it will have to invest more if they hire deaf people. So they don't rather not. They take hearing people. I witnessed autism. Autism is not just looking down on a deaf person. It's the behavior of the hearing and speaking people, how they treat. How your behavior is what you think. Okay? The behavior is driven by what you feel and what you believe and what you think. And many deaf people felt autism was terrible, how people looked at them. Okay? Because they didn't have it so good like you and me. And many of them came from backgrounds where their parents can't sign. Okay? Number 2 is many of them got left out at family events and everything, at weddings. Everybody is talking. I can't talk. I'm not involved. And many of them felt they were told to go to a corner. Like this is your place. So this is things that they've grown up with, bad experiences. It takes a long time for them to trust a hearing person. It really is. But for many deaf, it is a brokenness that many hearing people cannot feel. Okay? So this thing is 3 areas for communication, education, and employment. Nowadays, there are smaller groups of deaf starting to speak out. Like, I'm not sure how many of you saw on social media. What happened was he blasted a video on Facebook by copying and imitating how an interpreter.
Yes, I saw that.
Yes. He got great backs, man. And he was asked to take his video down, and he refused to take the video down. But mounting pressure by the deaf and others, he finally took the video down. So that at this stage, there are some smaller groups of deaf who are actually speaking up.
Yes.
That there are hearing people who are advocating as well together, compared to before.
Yeah.
It's a harder game, no? So because I witnessed all this back then, I felt I could make a difference by becoming an employer myself. So I already had experience.
Yes.
Okay, so and in 2006 with my brother, we co-founded RC Definitions. And that is the story. That in a nutshell tells you why RC.
All around the world,
They're like tell the public like
yeah, what kind of maybe some of the quotes, inspirational quotes that you would love to share with all the other deaf individuals or maybe the community? You can just share with us. Yeah.
My last words here is I really look forward to the public to support this cause of transforming and liberating the deaf person to feel free in an inclusive environment and help us to help them keep their jobs, livelihood, bread and butter. Second is, I do hope you will come to the cafe, dine in, and enjoy the experience being up close and personal with the deaf.
Yes.
So we'd like you to share the story with others as well. Your story, your experience of up close and personal with the deaf person. When you look at the deaf person, you see capability, the ability, the positive. You see the brokenness, yes, but that man or woman wants you to see, I am able to be able to contribute. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so
yes,
much.
thank you so much.
Yeah, for all
Thank
the
you.
information.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So